Hi everyone to the OWASP Switzerland meeting. Once again, we have an online meeting and we are very welcoming you to one other episode. Today with me is from the OWASP Switzerland team, Paddy, who will at the end also support the question round. And we have Manuel Cianci, who will be today's speaker. Today we will have the same procedure that we had last time for the ones that joined. So if you have any questions during the meeting, you can either use the channel directly on YouTube, and for those that do not want to use any kind of or don't want to have any exposure publicly, so don't want to have a user account, we've set up a very simple question form on owasp-switzerland.ch, where you can basically put your questions, and of course we would ask you to put in a name, but you do not need an account and can also post any questions completely anonymously. So we will try to answer all the questions, or especially Manuel will do that. And please understand that we will not answer the question during the presentation, just to make sure that we can stay in time, and all questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. So for today's presentation, as said, Manuel Cianci will join us and will tell us a lot of things about best practices and what works, what doesn't, and he will definitely get into more detail on what he will speak about, and also will introduce himself in more detail. If you want to support OWASP and OWASP Switzerland, as usual, we say that all the time, feel free to become an OWASP member. OWASP and all OWASP material is completely free. You can use it even commercially, completely without any charges. So if you want to support the project, please consider becoming a member and support the OWASP mission. And by that, I hand over to Manuel for his presentation. Thanks for being with us.
So perfect. Thank you, Sven. Thank you, OWASP Switzerland, for this opportunity that I can speak today about application security best practice. So why is application security important today? I was browsing the news recently, or I browsed the news for this presentation, and I didn't have to look along because it is just like overall everywhere in the news. So first of all, I'm sure every one of you heard about this one, the Apache HTTP server vulnerability. There was a path traversal in the news just last week. It was even a remote code execution bug if CGI was enabled. And funny thing was that even the patch of this vulnerability was still vulnerable to the same. And all this because of a software vulnerability in the source code. Another one, also just recently in September, was this. It's in the OMI. It's called OMI God. So OMI is a remote management tool coded by Microsoft, and it's highly used in the Azure environment. And here also, it was a really high impact, because you just had to remove the authentication header and you became root, and you could execute code as root on different workloads in the Azure environment. And also here, as you can see, I highlighted it. It was just a simple coding statement which was wrong. So basically, probably conditional statement, sorry. So if else, probably something went wrong and just led to this vulnerability. Then, over the last couple of years, also very prominent software which is always in the news. I'm sure you know XKCD and this one. Yeah, you know it. I'm talking about the pseudo privilege escalation bug, which was in January 2021 in the news. Also here, a bug in the code led to the privilege escalation on Linux systems. And the last one, also very high impact, SolarWinds, the supply chain attack we were seeing end of last year in December. SolarWinds is a company which has this Orion platform, and this software and this hardware are used severely by different government institutions, Microsoft, etc. And this SolarWinds company was hacked, and the CI/CD pipeline or the code distribution platform of them was being attacked. So the attacker could inject source code. This source code was built together with the software itself and then distributed to the customers of SolarWinds. So this is why it's a supply chain attack, and it had really high impact, and it's really important also here, another aspect of software security, of course. So who am I and why I'm talking about application security to you? So as Sven mentioned before, Manuel Cianci is my name. I'm very passionate about IT security, mostly about the offensive part. I do CTFs myself, and I'm interested in all things in IT security. So career-wise, I started as a software engineer, security software engineer, because I was always working in a security team or in a security company. My last company, I joined as a software engineer in Swisscom in the innovation department, also in the security team. I moved then on to be a security engineer and security consultant at the group security of Swisscom. And there, because of my background as a software engineer, I was mainly focusing on secure software development, introduced and created the DevSecOps model together with my team, which was a high success at Swisscom and still is used today. And after these 3 years as a security engineer and security consultant, I had the chance to move to a management position, and I could lead the security delivery team also at Group Security of Swisscom, which did internal consulting and reviewing of application in terms of security, of course. And also still there, together with the team, I was responsible for this DevSecOps model, which we introduced at Swisscom. And just recently, so last week, I joined Selective, which is a company, an offensive security company mainly, but offering all kinds of security services in Bern. I'm working there as a partner and also engineer, and yeah, really looking forward to this new role where I just started. And I also am very happy to announce that Selective just is becoming a corporate member of OWASP. So we are sponsoring the OWASP Foundation. And yeah, as Sven said, please also do so if you're interested in. So about today's talk, I will give you a 360-degree overview about application security. I will mostly focus on the technical aspects and measures, but not only. It's basically my view which I built up the last couple of years at Swisscom, so from the corporate security perspective. So I think in the end, everyone should get something out of this talk, no matter what role he's in. I will show you a quick overview how I would build up a security program for a team or for a company. And then I will dig into each aspect a bit more in detail, like security training, the technical security measures, and then how to integrate this into your company. And I will finish with some key takeaways which you then can take and hopefully use for yourself. So for the overview, how would I build security in a company? So I would always focus on these 3 aspects. So we have 3 pillars. On top, we have the security training. Then on the left, the technical security measures, and on the right side, then how to integrate the security into your processes, your company, your team. I will now deep dive into each of those aspects and show you a bit more in detail what I mean there. So let's start with security training. I think people are always numero uno because they are really the first line of defense of every company. And people are the greatest value of every company because like they bring you the money in the end, the know-how and what you need to keep your company running. But of course, as you all know, people are also like the greatest risk for the company because they are the weakest link. They are the guys who click on phishing links, etc. So it is really a win-win situation to educate employees in security topics. So win for the company, but also win for the employee. So to all of you guys, you should really be open to learn new things, especially security, because like the topic is really cool, it's really interesting. And also like security skills, they are very rare at the moment and they are in high demand on the job market. So it also makes you more valuable. It's something you can then use in your CV and in your career. From the company side, it's really important to have a tailored training. Don't just like buy some security training and which should fit everyone and then just use it like that, because then it probably will not benefit as much as it should. So you really need to focus on what are your companies and your employees' needs, and then offer a security training tailored to that. So if you have coders, if you have programmers in your company, you should teach them how to write secure code. But if you don't, it doesn't need to go that deep, but it might be that you just teach them how to secure the infrastructure. For example, if you buy software and then just run it on your premises. So don't offer technical training for non-technical people because it will be overwhelming, and also the other way around, just really offer tailored training. I tried to put some resources into this presentation. I think the slides can be shared afterwards, so you don't have to write this all down. From the technical side of things, or the technical training, there are many resources online which are for free. So I put here three resources to this presentation. So the first of all is the web security course from Portswigger. These are the guys who are creating Burp Suite, the proxy. This is really good. And then the second one, hands-on training, application.security. This is really, they have an OWASP top 10 education, and it's really hands-on. So you intercept some requests, you change it, you can then really also try to hack an application and see how you fix it. And of course, OWASP itself has a lot of resources which you should look at if you're in technical security. Then on the other side, the non-technical training. So if you have in your company always like non-technical security topics are at least equally important like the technical one, because you always will have business people or people who are not writing code on its own, but there are also like employees, and they also can click on phishing links, of course. So for example, how to handle credentials securely, or how to use a cloud storage, for example, a Dropbox in your company. That's all little things which for a lot of people are clear, but just if a few are mistaken there, then you will have problems. Phishing recognitions, of course, and also like how to safely handling IT infrastructure. Here also one free training resource which I wrote down is from the banking industry in Switzerland. It's called e-banking aber sicher. They created a phishing test, so you can learn to recognize phishing emails on this link. And the next point I would like to mention when talking about security training and security awareness in a company is also what to scout for when you're hiring security people or engineers with security background. So first of all, don't just look for certificates. Certificates are important, of course, but if you find people who are really interested in security, then that also can be like a good indicator to find the right people. So People who are passionate about security typically are reading or writing security articles, blogs, and magazines also in their free time, so they can talk about this. If they are solving security puzzles like CTFs, for example, that's also a strong indicator. And what I always liked in doing interviews was asking questions about their private infrastructure. So they should tell you how they build or how they secure their private infrastructure at home. And if, as a bonus question, if they know how to break this infrastructure, then you're very sure that you find the suitable people. Or you just do it like you just take the misguidance from the National Crime Agency to how to spot a kid hacker. You can take that and probably are also good to go. The next aspect I would like to focus on are the technical security measures. So first of all, threat modeling. I think this is the most important thing you can establish in a team or in a company. From my perspective, there are two different ways how to do threat models. So first of all, you have the structured threat modeling. So this is done by trained specialists. They have a standardized method. For example, Stride would be one. And the output of this would be a documentation with threats and risk scenarios. And this should be done periodically. So whenever you have like major changes in architecture, for example, of new applications, you implement many new features, then you should do such a threat model, which then really discovers aspects which you didn't think about. And on the other hand, the unstructured threat models, it goes hand in hand with the security training, what I was mentioning before. So this is something you should do all the time and everyone should do it. And it's not something where you need to have a lot of education about. It's just you should think about what could go wrong. Like, for example, the picture you can see here on the right. You have a slippery road or an icy road and if you would drive your car there, I'm sure every one of you would do a threat model and say, oh, I should not go too fast there. I should slow down. Otherwise, I will miss the curve and probably hit outside of the road. And that's exactly what I mean about everyone in a company should think all the time about what could go wrong, so he automatically implements safeguards. So if somebody is implementing source code, he should think in the future he's implementing, oh, what could be misused here? How could I exploit the application? And then he will automatically also implement the safeguards. So the next point I want to mention are the SAST, so static application security testing. SAST is a white box testing and it analyzes the source code for software vulnerabilities. And so this means it has, because it's white box testing, it knows everything, so you can just run it. It scales very well because it's like easily integratable. So it's easily integratable into the CI/CD pipeline, and it's also really easy to apply because the tool, it just runs on the source code. You don't need to compile anything or run anything. It's just like you use the tool, you run it against the source code, and you get very fast results back. On the contrary, you have some human verification which are needed because like the white box testing, so it has the source code and it knows everything about your application. That means that the SAST application, because it's missing the context, it will also like find vulnerabilities in stuff which might be even exposed to an attacker. So the attacker doesn't have the possibility to really exploit this because it's not there in the final product there. So you need to have somebody who can verify those findings and see if they're really true positives and no false positives. And because it's missing the context, it also doesn't detect logical flaws. So for example, what I mean there, It's that if you have a user which has no or low privileges, and there is a context error that it allows that this user could access an admin panel, so this would not be recognized by a static application security test. Here I created also a list of some open source tools which you can use. First of all, we have Node.js scan, which is of course for JavaScript, Node.js. Then we have SonarQube. This is highly recommended if you're programming in multiple languages. So this supports more than 20 languages out of the box. If you're working with Java, then you could look at Spotbox and the plugin FindSecBox. And for Python, we use Bandit, and for .NET, Secure Code Scan. The next thing I want to mention is software composite analysis. So short term is SCA. This is a dependency testing. So it checks your software base for open source software, and it detects what versions of open source you are using. And in those versions, it then checks for known vulnerabilities. Here, the pro is that it's very fast and it's also easy to integrate, like the SaaS application. And it finds vulnerability in third-party code. So code you are using from others, but you're not coding in yourself. You're not coding yourself. On the con side, that's of course it's only for known vulnerabilities. So somebody needs to report this bug beforehand and then publish in a database that these tools are detecting that. Also here, some tools which you could use or look at. So first of all, from the OWASP Foundation, we have dependency check and dependency track. Then if you're using GitHub, then there are the security alerts for vulnerable dependencies. I think this is automatically enabled for everyone if you are using GitHub. And then commercial solutions, but which are free for small teams, are Debricked and Sneak.io. And then the next one would be the dynamic application security testing. So the opposite of the SaaS is SaaS. This is a black box testing, so it has no access to the source code, but it runs and attacks the application. So it will build your application, it will compile it, it will build it, and then run it in an environment, and then test different scenarios against an application, so to see if it's vulnerable. The pro there is that this has a low false positive rate, because like if the application is running and the test case succeeds, then it's meant already that there will be that this is a true positive. It's also platform agnostic. That means this application. So if if you have a web application, for example, or it doesn't matter what kind of web application, you can just run it and use this tool. And it can also be integrated in your CI/CD pipeline. But here we already get to the constant, because like it's really complex to set up. It's not just like a SaaS tool where you can use the source code and run the tool. No, you need to compile it, you need to run it, and then to integrate this all in the CI/CD pipeline, this can be a bit difficult. It also has limited insights due to black box testing, so it can be that it misses something, which the SaaS on the other side it shows too much. This can be that it will show too less. And because it needs to build everything and run it, it can be rather slow than in opposite to the other ones. Also here, some open source examples which you can use. Of course, we're here at OWASP, so the OWASP SAP proxy is very famous. We have other solutions like W3AF, Nikto, and Wapiti, and of course also like the Burp Suite. This is not open source, but it's free for the community use, which you also can use as a test tool. some more XKCD, slightly modified. Hope you're enjoying it. So the next aspect in the technical security measures I want to highlight are penetration testing and bug bounty. So a quick comparison between the both is like penetration testing, as you know, is built per time, so hours or day typically, and it's done by a penetration testing company. So this will be a systematical test where you have, first of all, you have a scoping meeting. In the end, you will have a fact-finding meeting where you sit together with the penetration testers and they will explain you all the bugs they found and how to fix them. Typically, you also have a fixed time frame, so you finish the part of the application you developed, and then after that, you might do this penetration test. The bug bounty, on contrary, is built per bug and criticality, and it's a community-based approach. So you don't pay the time, but you pay per report, and if the bug, of course, needs to be valid and verified, if you find a legitimate bug, then, or if somebody finds a legitimate bug, he will be paid for the criticality of it. So there, it's not done like the penetration test, but you just publish a target list, which is the scope. And every participant of this bug bounty program then can report vulnerabilities and would get then a bounty if something is found. So when to do a penetration test and when to do a bug bounty program. So I highly recommend to really focus first on the security baseline. So ensure that you already have some security awareness, you do code reviews, and you have automated tools which test your applications for security. Like that, you can fix the low-hanging fruits yourself, and then have later on experts looking at stuff which you might not be able to do yourself. This way, you can save a lot of money and resources. Whenever, I mentioned it before with the threat modeling, so whenever you have major changes in architectures and feature, I recommend to do penetration testing and also this structured threat modeling, of course. So this way you ensure to systematically test these new features, architectures, which you are putting out into production. And then the bug bounty program, I also highly recommend that, but first you need to have some security maturity in your programs or your company team, so you can ensure a continuous security testing through the community. So that's also very beneficial. And some recommendations how I would do all these technical security measures together. So as I said just before and several times, ensure to have a security awareness within a team. And so really focus on that everyone can do these unstructured threat models. That's very important. Then do some sort of code reviews, maybe pair programming, so somebody checks the quality of the code, not only in security perspective, but in general, and implement security automation with different tooling. And here also focus first on the more simple ones, like the static application security testing and the secure composite analysis. Really don't start with the most complex first. Then do structured threat models and penetration testing periodically when you have the changes, and ensure to have a bug bounty program then to have continuous testing of your application. Also here, an additional resource from the OWASP Foundation, you find on this link, you find a lot of security automation tooling, which are recommended by OWASP, so you can check this out for some more inspiration. Many of the tools I already mentioned before in the talk. To the third aspect, the third pillar of a security program is really to how to integrate security in your company and or your team. So first of all, here really focus to adapt it to your needs. Don't overcomplicate things because otherwise it will not work and everyone will just find workarounds and it will probably be less secure than it was before. So again, I cannot highlight this enough. Make security everyone's job. That's directly linked with the unstructured threat models I was telling before. So everyone should always ask the question, what could go wrong in his part of the job, of course. And what also is highly recommended to establish a risk management. So if you have security vulnerabilities or security risks, that you can show them to the management or to the product owners how much worse is this risk. So you can always like to compare them with the business features. You don't need to have 100% security, but you need to know how much risk you have if you don't fix a certain vulnerability, for example. So that's also very important. If you're working in a small business, I would really focus on having technical toll gates. So like review process, do threat modeling, do technical scans like SAST and SCA, like basically the things I mentioned before in the technical aspects in the recommendations in the end. Also, security satellites or security champions, how we call them at Swisscom, in every team. That's very important. So you have somebody in a team, in a technical team, but he has a bit more know-how or experience in security. And if anyone of the team has questions about security, he should approach this person because he should be like the guy trained for it. And also exchange all the security satellites, the security champions in the security guild. So they also have like this interconnection between the different teams and the different security topics. And so they can also profit from each other. The security training, security awareness in the company, very important. I mentioned this one quite often now. Also train non-technical people so they can click phishing links as well. And if you're a small business, in a big corporation, you probably already have dedicated persons doing that. But if you're in a small, maybe not, don't forget about the regulatory compliances. So depending on the customers and the data you are processing, you might have to implement GDPR, FINMA, other regulatory compliances. If you're in a large company, then I would suggest that you have like a dedicated security department or security team. So this would be the second line of defense. And they are responsible for the overall security program, so the information security management system. They will create the security requirements which apply to the whole company, which everyone then needs to fulfill. They will also test, of course, and check, verify if you are doing this correctly. And typically a security training and awareness program will also be located at this location. Then here also from my learnings in my former company, use existing roles and processes. Don't create too much overhead. So don't invent many new security roles or security processes, because like if you create too much overhead, and in a big company, you always will have this budget rounds where you have to cut down the budget. Then the overhead is typically the thing which goes first, so which will be cut first. And you don't want to have security cut out because of budget reasons. What always helped is that security is a part of quality. So if somebody is responsible for quality, he should also be the responsible person to ensure security. And also here, like I mentioned before, security satellites or security champions in every engineering team are very beneficial. Like same as I mentioned before. Also here, create a company-wide exchange, like a security guild, where they are working on security topics together and ensuring even that the maturity will be higher over time. Also include corporate security in this security guild. Probably they will be the guys who are running the security guild, but if not, really ensure that they are also part of it. So basically, this was already it. Key takeaways. So in this presentation, I wanted really to highlight that security is everyone's job. So what I mentioned many times here again, focus on the security baseline first. Don't don't start with the most complicated things, really start with the low-hanging fruits and then work your way up until you have a really high security maturity. And also combine security automation and also the different security automation tools together with threat modeling and manual penetration testing or manual security testing in general. Because like that, you have different methods or different tools which are all focusing on a different aspect of security. And if you combine all of them together, the security level will get even higher. And then the last part, integrate security as smoothly as you can in your work processes. So don't create hurdles and obstacles for everyone. Just really make sure that security is easy to use and easy to live. Yes, this was my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. If you want to do a follow-up, I think there are many topics where you can do a lot of deep dives in it. Just drop me an email, write me on Twitter. I would also appreciate some feedbacks, of course. So yes, thank you very much. And I would hand over back to Sven and OWASP guys.
So thank you very much for this very interesting talk, Manuel. Very much appreciated. And we'll directly heading into the question and answers section. And all you guys out there, feel free to further post any questions you have on owasp-switzerland.ch, and we'll take that up from there for you. Okay, let's head into everything. There's one question. Actually, well, I received two questions in the area of people and training. One of the questions was about, do you have any recommendation for formal education or certifications that you think are most valuable out in the industry?
Yeah, this depends really on the context. I don't feel confident to just say like one certification, this fits all, of course, because like it really depends in what kind of position you are in. So if you're like doing an overall a security role where you need to know all the aspects, but it's more high level, a CISSP would be good, or maybe a CISA. If you have more on cloud on a technical level, then depends on what platform you're working. But it's really dependent on what is your role. So there are many good certifications and also many which are not very. Yeah, it depends really where what role it is for.
Mm-hmm.
But if somebody wants to discuss this with me, you can contact me and we will get into this topic. I have several certifications myself, and yeah, why not?
Mm. Ivan had something kind of along this line also. He posted a question whether you have any advice on a dedicated training path if you're today not into IT security at all. So how would you kind of start the engine up and come up to speed?
So he's not in IT security or not in IT at all.
He's not in IT security, if I understood that right. But he understands that, some even entry-level jobs now require some IT security know-how and experience, and it becomes even more important when you need to kind of have an ISO certification or something like that, that you need to provide proof that you have a staff that is able and up to the task. And he wants to know, well, do you see a training path for such a person that maybe is today just a developer and then wants to kind of start up?
So again, here security is very broad. So if you're already working in IT, then I would probably suggest to start there where you already are. So start exploring the IT aspects or the IT security aspect of your work environment at the moment. So you might be working in an infrastructure. So check out what could be done more for security, and then go broader and broader. If you're working in software development, for example, then as I mentioned before, I would really start with OWASP top 10, see what could go wrong. If you're technical, then I think the best way to really learn it and not just getting certifications is to solve security puzzles like CTFs, etc. So because then you really learn the technical details. But of course, you need to be a technical person because otherwise it will be just too hard to get in. Yeah. Also here, it's a bit difficult. So I would start in the field where you are already working to start exploring the security aspects, and depending on what is your goal, starting also to see what certifications there are out. So for example, if you're working or if your goal is to go into cloud security, then start learning as much as you can on the cloud in general, and maybe also like dedicated on some different clouds like Azure or AWS. You can do like the technical trainings which are not security, because that's also important, and then you can also do the security certification. So yeah, it depends on what the goal is, really.
Okay, thanks a lot. And one topic you also covered was when you kind of hire people. Well, I think usually you hire security professionals, but do you have also any specific recommendation if there's someone who needs to kind of hire a just developer? So not dedicated security people, but hiring just a developer. What should he kind of cover?
I would really make sure to hire developers or technical people who also know about security. So they don't need to be penetration testers or security professionals, really, but they need to have this security awareness. So what I was mentioning many, many times in my presentation is to do this unstructured threat model. So I would just ask, maybe you ask a coding question, and then I would add an additional question like, yeah, what could go wrong, or how could somebody misuse this function, for example. So I would really try to hire people who already know about security and are also interested in security topics.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. Thanks a lot. Then we have one question from Andreas in the area of what you covered in general in the awareness topic. He's asking here, what helped in your experience and in your eyes the most to make companies aware of security that's important from the beginning, so starting with business requirements. So what helps them to see that?
It's a bit sad, but usually like an incident helps the most. It's really like a big bang. If you have something, if something happens, then from one moment to another, the whole company is really aware about security. Of course, that's not something you want to enforce or you want to happen, because like it's always bad for the reputation and you lose data and money and customers in the end. But usually this was really the main focus when, yeah, the main thing which kept things going. So I think but you can simulate it a bit. So maybe you do some red team exercises, or you do some awareness showcases where you can see like how easy it is or what could really go wrong. And if you get the attention, then I think it's something which needs to be established on all layers. So it needs the upper management needs to support it and promote it and talk about security, and you need to get the time and possibility to educate all the people in the company. So that's yeah, very important. But usually you can get attention with a simulation, with a showcase where you can see like, hey, it could also happen to us. that probably helps most.
Mhm, mhm. Thanks a lot. Then we have one question in the area of threat modeling, which you mentioned. So that's from Anonymous. So how granular would you kind of do threat modeling actually? Would you create 10 or 1,000 or 10,000 of scenarios, or uh, what's your feel? How do you know when it's good enough?
Um, Depends again on the, I mean, threat models you can do on each level. You can do it on a company level, and you have like then really high level threats and risks in the end. So it depends who are your stakeholders. And I probably would start, if you're in the engineering team, I would start on your level, on your layer, and then it's more about like, yeah, you cannot give an exact number here, but you should like in the area where you're in charge, you should think about what could go wrong. You should write down an architecture and also like the attack scenarios, and typically then yeah, depends on the flight level really again here. um, I would not say how many scenarios, because like if you're really on a low level, then you probably can handle everything. If you go up and up, then it will become unmanageable. So I would start on a medium level probably, because like then also the risks are a bit higher as if you would be on the lowest level, and then see what makes sense. Like if it's too big, you cannot handle it anymore. So yeah.
So
But also here would gladly, if I see an architecture, an image or a drawing of an architecture, I could challenge that, and we could discuss this.
Mm. So with a medium level, you mean kind of a project level or a solution level, or what do you mean with a
I mean,
medium
if you
level?
if you look at an infrastructure of a whole company, I think if you just do it on this level, it's probably too abstract because you're too high. But if you do it for like one little small feature, just one threat model, a structured threat model for this one, then it's probably too small. So you need to find like the right point to cut, right?
Mm.
So I would say that you have maybe an architecture of the whole application, and then you can do a threat model just for this application. But if you think it's more relevant that you do a bit more the environment architecture with the systems, then you need to go a bit up.
Yeah, understood. Thanks. Um, you also introduced to us many tools for automation, such as SCA, so the dependency scanning thing, or also static code scanning and dynamic scanning. And one of the questions we had here from Master Andy is if you could use just one of these, which one would you actually choose? So, or maybe it would be also the question with which one would you start?
As I said in my recommendations, I probably would start with the SAST tool. Because it's easy to integrate. It finds many things. I would go with a combination of SAST and SCA. So it's not just one, now it's two. But I really would combine those. So if you have third-party libraries, then SCA is very important. So you get constantly a feed about vulnerabilities in your libraries, and the SaaS tool is very powerful. But you need to have somebody who can handle the results, and also, yeah, that's very important. But I would go with SaaS and SCA, and probably DAST I would save for later, but do all the things first. Yeah.
Hmm. By the way, talking about SCA, for example, um, imagine I want to start that, and I already have a huge existing project with that one. So how do you start? How do I start there so that, well, I'm not having too many findings, actually, especially too many false positives. What's your approach to that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and that was also like a big challenge we had at Swisscom, of course. I probably would start maybe with Delta. Just start, and with every new source code you are committing, this should go through a SAST, for example. So you ensure that everything which is new is done properly. But of course, you cannot neglect all the old code you already had. So you need to make a roadmap or something of out of it, that how you are addressing that. In the end, the goal should be that you have tested all source code, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thanks. Another technical measure you mentioned was penetration testing. You also said there that is done by an external company usually. Uh, Gabriel is asking whether it wouldn't be a good idea to have in larger companies a dedicated internal team that actually is responsible to do penetration testing on a professional level.
Yeah, it depends. In the end, this is a business case, right? If you have more cash out, and you can, as you would have if you would have the internal team, then it probably makes sense to hire penetration testing yourself. Yeah, I would say like a combination would make sense, that you have like at least people who have the technical skills, so they can also challenge the external companies and check for quality and do sometimes the pen tests on their own. And it depends on the scale, right? If you then have like many applications and services, then it might be too much to handle for an internal team. So in the end, it's a business case. I would calculate it with money if it would make sense or not.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, I would make sure that I would have people who would be able to do pen testing, just for the understanding that they can challenge external companies and they know what these companies are talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Then we have another one regarding awareness that dropped in. It's from Manuel also. I think not yourself, but he's asking you how would you recommend to raise the C-level awareness within a small company actually. So, and without being the fat guy, well, the one that actually plays on fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So, any recommendations on that?
Yeah, risk management. Absolutely, do risk management for C-level and for board of directors. Do, if you have already the technical information about security vulnerabilities and you know what should be done, then to talk to the management. It's always very important to have risk management, so they don't care or they don't want to know all the technical details, but they want to know in the end how much does it cost, like in simple terms. And if you establish a risk management, and if you can then can do a comparison between feature and security risks, etc., then you have a justification how to prioritize security.
Mm. I think that's actually very good advice. Risk analysis, risk management actually really is the big thing, and that can be a game changer if you get somebody to listen. So, and I've spared the what I think is the hardest questions for the end. There was, well, it was Anonymous again who asks this. Do you have any numbers by mean of cost or effort? Uh, what all this means that you kind of recommended, starting from awareness over the tool integration and so on. So that's probably very hard to answer, but any thoughts on that?
Um, I think you can. Yeah, I cannot give you an exact number, but I think you can do it in a way that you don't have to pay much in cash out yourself. So you have people who are building this up. So as I showed you, there are many free resources, so you don't need to spend a lot of licensing costs or training resources, etc. You just need somebody who collects all of this and pushes it in the company. Then you probably, depends on the company size again. Huh? Maybe if you're in a big company, you cannot just have one person doing that, but you need a team. As I said, in the end, how you should integrate this in the different company sizes. If you're a small team or a small company, then probably one person is enough who can start working on this part-time. But of course, you can hire people to do that for you and license software, etc. Then it will be very, very expensive. So yeah, as you said, I cannot give you an exact number, but yeah, I hope these are some good starting points that you can just like maybe put some person on it, and this person can start with it and see what really important. The most important thing is like it should be adapted to the company. So that's the hard part. That's also why I cannot give you any numbers, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, thanks a lot for that. And when I take a look at our question boards, looks like we're basically done. So let's head to closing the event then. Thank you very much, Manuel, for this very interesting talk and for giving us answers to very complex questions also. And many thanks to all of you out there. Thanks for being here and staying with us. Before you close the screen, make sure you save the date. It's for the 2nd of December, Thursday, 2nd December. We will have the next OWASP event. It's about security in a games world with Benedikt Tröster from a company that actually produces games. So we'll taking a look at what's different and what's the same in a games world there. So thanks again, everybody, and I wish you a nice evening and goodbye. Have a good time.